The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, each one representing their home world. The air hummed with translation devices turning alien languages into words everyone could understand. Today, they were all here to talk about one problem: humans. Ambassador Zethkara of the Vrex Dominion stood up from his chair. His gray skin was covered in scales, and his red eyes glowed as he looked around the room. The Vrex were one of the oldest and strongest races in the galaxy. When they spoke, others listened. Fellow council members, Zethkara said, his voice carrying across the hall, we have a growing threat that we can no longer ignore: the humans. A wave of whispers spread through the chamber. Some beings nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. 50 years ago, we welcomed Earth into our community, Zethkara continued. We thought they would be like other new species, grateful for our guidance, happy to follow our rules. We were wrong. On the huge screen behind him, images appeared. Human ships flying through space. New colonies being built on distant planets. Trade agreements being signed with smaller alien races. In just 50 years, they have spread to 12 star systems. Their population grows faster than any other species. Their technology advances at a rate we have never seen before. Zethkara's voice grew harder. And their diplomat, Ambassador Katie Sullivan, has been too successful in making friends with our smaller member species. In the human section of the hall, Ambassador Katie Sullivan sat quietly. She was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and kind eyes. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Around her sat the small human delegation, all of them looking uncomfortable as the Vrex spoke. The humans are disrupting the balance we have maintained for thousands of years, Zethkara said. They question our trade rules. They offer better deals to species we have guided for centuries. They spread their ideas about freedom and equality. This cannot continue. From the far corner of the hall, a very old voice spoke up. You speak of disruption, young Vrex. But do you remember why we have rules? Do you remember the first law? All eyes turned to Elder Counselor Morden of the Ethereal Collective. He was so old that his species had mostly become energy beings. His form flickered like a blue flame as he floated in his chair. The Ethereals were the oldest known race in the galaxy. They had been here when the Council was first formed, long before the Vrex or any other current member species. The first law is ancient history, Zethkara said with a dismissive wave. Superstition from a more primitive time. Is it? Morden's voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the hall. The first law was written in blood and fire. It was created after the Great Purge, 3,000 years ago. Do any of you remember what happened to the Harthani? The hall grew quiet. Some of the older species shifted nervously. The younger races looked confused. The Harthani were proud. Like you, Zethkara. They were strong and had ruled their part of the galaxy for millennia. Then they met another species. A species that seemed weak and emotional. A species that loved their children above all else. Morden's form grew brighter as he spoke. The Harthani thought they could control this species by threatening what they loved most. They attacked the children. They thought it would make the parents weak and afraid. What happened? Asked a young delegate from one of the newer species. The parents burned the galaxy, Morden said simply. They did not just destroy the Harthani, they erased them. Every trace of their civilization, their history, their very existence was wiped away. The survivors created the first law to make sure it never happened again. And what does this first law say? Katie Sullivan asked, speaking for the first time. Morden turned his attention to her. Never harm the young of any species capable of interstellar travel, for their parents will burn the galaxy to ash in response. Zethkara laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the hall. More superstition. The humans are not the Veltar, they are soft. They value peace above strength. They can be controlled. The Veltar, Morden said quietly. Yes, that was their name. I had almost forgotten. They seemed soft, too, until their children were threatened. But Zethkara was not listening. He had turned back to the council. I propose a simple solution. The humans have 12 colony ships heading to the Kepler 442 system. These ships carry families, children. We intercept them. We make demands. When the humans see that we are serious, they will accept limits on their expansion. You cannot be serious. Katie Sullivan stood up, her face pale. You are talking about threatening innocent families, children. I am talking about preventing a war, Zethkara replied. Better to act now while we still can, than to wait until the humans grow too strong to stop. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Species after species spoke. Some supported the Vrex plan, others had doubts. The smaller species, many of whom had good relationships with humans, argued against it. But the larger, more powerful species saw the humans as a threat to their authority. Elder Morden spoke again and again, trying to remind them of the dangers, but his warnings fell on deaf ears. The younger species had never heard of the Veltar or the Great Purge. The older species had convinced themselves that it was ancient history with no meaning for today. Finally, the vote was called. The Great Hall fell silent as the results appeared on the screen. 847 votes in favor of the Vrex proposal, 156 votes against. The motion passed. The decision is made, announced the council speaker. The Vrex Dominion will intercept the human colony fleet at Kepler 442. They will demand that Earth accept limits on human expansion. If the humans refuse, appropriate pressure will be applied. Katie Sullivan stood up again, her voice shaking with anger. You have no idea what you are doing. Humans are not like other species. We do not respond to threats against our children the way you think we will. We shall see, Zethkara said with a cold smile. As the council session ended, Elder Morden floated over to Katie Sullivan. I am sorry, Ambassador, I tried to warn them. What really happened to the Veltar? Katie asked quietly. They became something else, Morden replied. Something that the galaxy had never seen before and hoped never to see again. Pray that humans are different. But Katie Sullivan was already thinking about the colony ships, about the families aboard, them, about the children who were now in danger because of a decision made by beings who had forgotten the lessons of history. Far away, in the Kepler system, Captain Jake Morrison was having dinner with his family aboard the UES Horizon. His wife Lisa was telling stories about her work in the medical bay. Their 8-year-old son Danny was excited about seeing their new home world. They had no idea that death was coming for them, sent by those who had forgotten why the first law existed. The human colony fleet moved through space like a chain of bright stars. 25 ships carried 50,000 people toward their new home in the Kepler system. Families had sold everything they owned on Earth for a chance at a new life among the stars. Children pressed their faces against the windows, watching the endless black of space roll by. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, the largest ship in the fleet. He was a tall man with graying hair and calm eyes. He had served in Earth's Space Navy for 20 years before taking this job. Leading families to new worlds was different from military service, but he liked it better. There was hope in this, work instead of fear. Sir, we're picking up something on long-range sensors, reported Lieutenant Ben Carter from his station. Multiple ships, heading our way. Jake walked over to look at the display. Red dots were moving toward them from the direction of the outer system. How many? 15 ships, sir, they're big ones. Military class. Jake felt a cold weight in his stomach. Military ships this far out meant trouble. Can you identify them? Working. On it, sir. Ben's fingers moved over his controls. Got it. They're Vrex ships. Vrex Dominion Battle Group. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew about the Vrex. They were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Their ships were fast and heavily armed. But why would they be here? Open a channel to all ships in the fleet, Jake ordered. Tell them to stay calm and hold formation, then try to contact the Vrex. The main screen flickered and showed the lead Vrex ship. It was massive and dark, covered in weapons. A moment later, an alien face appeared on the screen. Admiral Krexthul had the typical Vrex features: gray-scaled skin, red eyes, and sharp teeth. When he spoke, his voice was cold and hard. "Human fleet, you will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Horizon. We are a civilian colony fleet heading to Kepler 442b. We have done nothing wrong." "You exist," Krexthul replied. "That is enough. Your species spreads too fast and takes too much. The Galactic Council has decided that humans must accept limits." "What kind of limits?" "You will return to Earth. You will abandon your colonization efforts. You will accept that there are places in the galaxy where humans do not belong." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "These are families, Admiral. People looking for new homes. We have the right to travel freely in Council space." "Rights are given by those with power," Krexthul said. "We have power. You do not. Turn around and go home." "I cannot do that. These people have given up everything for this chance. We will continue to our destination." Krexthul's red eyes glowed brighter. "Then you will face the consequences." The screen went black. Around the bridge, warning lights began to flash. The Vrex ships were powering up their weapons. "Red alert," Jake called out. "Signal all ships to prepare for emergency maneuvers." But the colony ships were not warships. They were big and slow, designed to carry families and supplies, not to fight. The Vrex battle group surrounded them easily. The first shots came without warning. Bright beams of energy struck the UES New Hope, one of the family ships. Jake watched in horror as explosions tore through the vessel's hull. The ship was carrying 2,000 people, including hundreds of children. "They're targeting the family sections," Ben Carter reported, his voice shaking. "They're deliberately hitting the areas where the children are." Jake grabbed his communicator. "All ships, this is Morrison. Protect the families. Get the children to the emergency pods." But it was too late. The Vrex had planned this attack carefully. They knew exactly where the families lived on each ship. Their weapons punched through the hull and into the schools, the playgrounds, the family quarters. On the UES New Hope, the lights went out. Emergency. Sirens wailed as air rushed out through the holes in the ship. Parents screamed for their children. Teachers tried to get students to safety, but there was nowhere to run. Lisa Morrison, Jake's wife, was in the medical bay when the attack started. She grabbed her emergency kit and ran toward the family sections. The corridors were filled with smoke and floating debris. She could hear children crying somewhere in the darkness. "Danny," she called out. Their 8-year-old son had been in the recreation area when the attack began. "Danny, where are you?" She found him near the observation deck, floating in space near a broken window. The emergency force field had failed, and the room had lost all its air. Danny's small body drifted among toys and books that had been sucked out into the void. Lisa pressed her face against the window and screamed. Her son's eyes were closed, his face peaceful, as if he were only sleeping. But she knew he was gone. The cold of space had taken him in seconds. All around the fleet, the same scene played out again and again. The Vrex weapons were precise and deadly. They did not try to destroy the ships completely. They targeted specific areas where they knew families lived. It was not random violence. It was planned terror. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched his son's body drift past the main window. Tears ran down his face, but his voice was steady when he spoke into his communicator. "All ships with working engines, prepare to retreat. We cannot fight them. We have to save who we can." The Vrex let them go. They had made their point. Admiral Krexthul sent one final message. "Remember this day, humans. Remember what happens when you do not listen to your betters." The surviving ships limped back toward Earth. Behind them, they left a field of debris and bodies. The final count was terrible. 1,847 people dead, including 623 children. The youngest victim was only 3 years old. The oldest child to die was 16. The news reached Earth before the ships did. Every human in the galaxy saw the footage. Children's bodies floating in space. Parents weeping over small forms wrapped in emergency blankets. The burned remains of playgrounds and schools. On Earth, President Amanda Clark stood before the cameras. Her face was stone, but her eyes burned with something cold and dangerous. "The Galactic Council has made a choice," she said. "They have chosen to target our children. They believe this will make us weak. They believe this will make us surrender." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, harder. "They are wrong. As of this moment, all human colonies are being evacuated. All human children are being moved to secure locations. All human military forces are being mobilized." General Robert Hayes, commander of Earth's Defense Forces, began issuing orders. Every ship that could carry weapons was being converted for war. Civilian factories stopped making cars and computers and started making missiles and armor. But the most frightening change was in the people themselves. Humans had always been emotional, but now that emotion was focused like a laser beam. They were not angry. Anger was too small a word for what they felt. They were something else entirely. In research centers around Earth, scientists worked around the clock on new weapons. Dr. Benjamin Price, the head of experimental physics, had a new look in his eyes. The same look that appeared on every human face when they saw the footage from the colony fleet. "What are you working on?" his assistant asked. "Something that will make sure this never happens again," Price replied. "Something that will teach the galaxy why humans protect their children." On the edge of human space, merchant vessels began disappearing. Vrex trading posts went silent. No one claimed responsibility, but everyone knew. The humans had begun their response. Elder Morden, watching from his chambers on Nexus Prime, sent urgent messages to every species he could contact. The message was always the same. "They have awakened the child killer's curse. Prepare for the burning." But across the galaxy, most beings thought the old ethereal was being dramatic. Humans were soft. Humans were peaceful. How much damage could they really do? They were about to find out. 3 months after the attack on the colony fleet, strange things began happening across the galaxy. Vrex trading posts that had operated for decades suddenly went silent. No distress calls, no explosions, no battles. The stations were just empty when other ships arrived to check on them. The first to disappear was Station Kethmore on the edge of human space. It was a small outpost where Vrex merchants sold weapons and ship parts to anyone with enough credits. When a Zephyrian cargo ship docked there for supplies, they found the station completely abandoned. Food was still warm in the cafeteria. Computer screens were still running. But every Vrex was gone. The same thing happened at 12 other stations over the next few weeks. No signs of violence, no damage to the facilities. The Vrex had simply vanished, leaving behind only empty corridors and the smell of fear. Admiral Susan Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, humanity's newest and most dangerous warship. She was a small woman with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Before the attack on the colony fleet, she had been an explorer captain, mapping new star systems for peaceful colonization. Now she commanded something the galaxy had never seen before, a human war fleet built for one purpose. "Status report," she said to her bridge crew. "Vrex patrol ship detected at Grid 77 Alpha," reported Commander Paul Davis. "They're running a standard trade route escort mission." "How many aboard?" "Sensors show 43 Vrex crew members, sir." Susan nodded. "Begin the harvest." The Retribution moved closer to the Vrex ship, but it did not attack with weapons. Instead, it used something new. A blue beam shot out from the human ship and surrounded the Vrex vessel. The alien ship's engines stopped working. Their communications went dead. Their life support systems began to fail. Inside the Vrex ship, the crew panicked. They had never seen technology like this before. Their captain, a veteran warrior named Vex Thara, tried to send a distress call, but nothing worked. The humans had somehow taken control of their entire ship without firing a single shot. The blue beam pulled the Vrex ship into the Retribution's cargo bay. When the bay doors closed, human soldiers in black armor boarded the alien vessel. But they did not kill the Vrex crew. Instead, they did something worse. "You are going to watch something," the human commander told Vexithara. "You are going to see what your people did to our children, and then you are going to carry that memory for the rest of your life." The Vrex crew was forced to sit in chairs while screens showed them footage from the colony fleet attack. They saw the children's bodies floating in space. They heard the parents screaming. They watched 8-year-old Danny Morrison drift past the camera, his small face peaceful in death. "This is what you did," the human commander said. "This is what your leaders ordered. Now you understand why we are here." After hours of forced viewing, the Vrex crew was released. Their ship was repaired and they were given enough fuel to reach the nearest Vrex world. But they were changed. The horror of what they had seen broke something inside them. Many of them refused to serve in the Vrex military anymore. Some went insane from the guilt. This happened again and again throughout Vrex space. Human ships appeared like ghosts, captured Vrex vessels, showed the crews the footage of dead children, and then released them. It was not traditional warfare. It was something far more effective. Captain Jake Morrison commanded his own ship now, the rebuilt UES Horizon. The name was the same, but everything else was different. This new Horizon was built for war, its hull black as space and covered with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Jake stood in what used to be a recreation room, but now served as a command center for special operations. On the walls were pictures of all 623 children who had died in the attack. In the center was a large photo of his son Danny, smiling and holding a toy spaceship. "Sir, we have located the Vrex colony at Helix Prime," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim. "Population approximately 50,000. Light defenses." Jake studied the tactical display. Helix Prime was a farming world where Vrex families grew food for their military. It was not a strategic target in normal warfare, but this was not normal warfare. "Begin evacuation protocol," Jake ordered. The UES Horizon appeared in orbit around Helix Prime without warning. Vrex defense satellites tried to lock onto the human ship, but their weapons could not find it. The Horizon existed in normal space, and somewhere else at the same time, using technology that Dr. Benjamin Price had developed in the months after the colony attack. Jake opened a communication channel to the planet below. "This is Captain Morrison of the human fleet. You have 24 hours to evacuate this world. Any civilian who remains after that time will be considered a military target." The Vrex planetary governor, a female named Cassandra, appeared on the screen. "You cannot do this. We are not soldiers. We are farmers and families." "So were the people on our colony ships," Jake replied. "You have 24 hours. The humans were not bluffing. As the evacuation began, other human ships arrived in the system. They formed a blockade around the planet, allowing civilian ships to leave but destroying any military vessels that approached. The message was clear. The Vrex could save their people, but they could not save their world. When the time limit expired, the human ships began their work. They did not drop bombs or fire energy weapons. Instead, they released clouds of tiny machines called nanites that ate through metal and stone. The nanites consumed the cities, the farms, the roads, everything the Vrex had built over centuries. Within days, Helix Prime was stripped bare. The nanites left the soil and water untouched, but every trace of Vrex civilization was gone. The planet could support life, but it would take generations to rebuild what had been lost. This pattern repeated across Vrex space. Human forces did not seek to conquer territory. They wanted something more complete, the total destruction of Vrex civilization. Every military base, every government building, every symbol of Vrex power was systematically erased. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched in growing horror. Ambassador Katie Sullivan, now dressed in black mourning clothes, sat in the human section and said nothing. When other delegates tried to speak with her, she only replied with 4 words: "You killed our children." Counselor Zethkara, who had proposed the attack on the colony fleet, tried to organize a response. "The humans have gone insane," he told the council. "They must be stopped before they destroy everything." But other species were afraid to act. The humans had shown new weapons that no one understood. Their ships could appear anywhere without warning. Their technology seemed to break the basic laws of physics, Elder Mordun floated in his chamber watching reports from across the galaxy. The ethereal had lived for thousands of years, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were remaking themselves into something the galaxy had never encountered. "How long until the Vrex surrender?" his aide asked. "The Vrex will never surrender," Mordun replied. "Their pride will not allow it. But it does not matter. The humans are not seeking surrender. They are seeking extinction." On Earth, President Amanda Clark received daily reports about the war. Human casualties were almost zero. Vrex military losses were total. But the cost was visible in other ways. The humans who returned from combat were different, harder, colder. They had seen too much and done too much to ever be the same. Dr. Benjamin Price worked in his laboratory, creating new weapons faster than the military could deploy them. His latest invention could make entire star systems uninhabitable. When his assistant asked why he was building such terrible things, Price pointed to a picture on his desk. It showed him with his daughter Emma, who had been on one of the colony ships. She was 7 years old in the photo, laughing as she played with a puppy. She had died when the Vrex attacked the family quarters. "Because they took everything that mattered," Price said. "Now we take everything from them." The war was only 3 months old, but already the galaxy was changing. Species that had ruled for millennia watched nervously as human ships patrolled their borders. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries now carried warnings about human patrols, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the Vrex leadership finally understood what they had awakened. But understanding came too late. The humans were no longer the peaceful explorers who had joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. They had become something else entirely, something that would not stop until every trace of those who had harmed their children was wiped from existence. 6 months after the attack on the human colony fleet, Dr. Benjamin Price stood in his laboratory looking at something that should not exist. The device on his table was no bigger than a briefcase, but it contained enough power to destroy a star. The equations behind it made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about physics, but it worked. "Are you sure about this?" asked his assistant, Dr. Rachel Stone. She was one of the few people on Earth who understood what Price had created. "Once we use this, there's no going back." Price looked at the photo of his daughter Emma on his desk. She smiled at him from the picture, forever 7 years old, forever innocent. "They crossed a line when they killed our children. Now we show them what happens when you make humans angry." The device was called a quantum resonance disruptor. In simple terms, it could reach inside a star and change how it worked. Instead of burning steadily for billions of years, the star would collapse and explode in a matter of hours. Price had built 12 of them. Admiral Susan Chen received the new weapons aboard the UES Retribution. Her ship had grown larger over the months, adding new sections filled with technology that most species could not even imagine. The Retribution was no longer just a warship. It was a mobile factory for building things designed to end civilizations. "Target confirmed," reported Commander Paul Davis. "Vrex Prime, homeworld of the Vrex Dominion, population 8 billion. Susan studied the tactical display. Vrex Prime was the heart of the enemy empire. It was protected by thousands of defense satellites, orbital battle stations, and the largest space fleet in the galaxy. No single ship had ever challenged it before. "Take us in," Susan ordered. The Retribution did not approach Vrex Prime through normal space. Instead, it used the dimensional manipulation technology that human scientists had developed. The ship existed in multiple realities at once, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. Vrex sensors could detect it sometimes, but their weapons could never lock on. Captain Jake Morrison led the assault in his ship, the UES Horizon. As they approached the Vrex homeworld, he opened a communication channel that would reach every Vrex on the planet. "This is Captain Morrison of the human fleet," he said, his voice calm and cold. "6 months ago, your leaders ordered an attack on our colony ships. They deliberately targeted areas where our children lived. 623 innocent children died because your people thought they could use our love for our families as a weapon against us. On Vrex Prime, billions of aliens stopped what they were doing to listen. The human ships had appeared in their most heavily defended space without warning. Their leaders had told them that humans were weak and emotional, but the voice speaking to them sounded like death itself. "We have come to collect payment for what you took from us," Jake continued. "You cannot give us back our children, but you can learn what it means to lose everything you care about." The Vrex defense fleet moved to attack the human ships, but it was useless. Human weapons reached through their shields as if they were not there. Vrex missiles exploded before they could reach their targets. Energy beams that should have destroyed the human ships passed right through them. Admiral Krexthul, the same Vrex who had ordered the attack on the colony fleet, commanded the defense of his home world. He watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was destroyed ship by ship. The humans were not just defeating them, they were playing with them. "How are they doing this?" he screamed at his science officer. "I do not know, sir. Their technology operates on principles we do not understand. It is as if they have rewritten the laws of physics." On the surface of Vrex Prime, the planetary defense grid activated. Massive energy cannons emerged from hidden bunkers and fired at the human ships. The beams were powerful enough to crack a moon in half, but they passed through the human vessels without effect. Jake Morrison's ship, the UES Horizon, materialized directly above the capital city. It was so close that Vrex citizens could see it through their windows. The ship hung there like a black sword pointed at their hearts. "You have 1 hour to evacuate this world," Jake announced. "We are going to teach your son to die. The process will take 3 years. That gives you time to save your people, but your world will become uninhabitable." The announcement caused panic across Vrex Prime. 8 billion aliens began trying to flee their homeworld at once. But there were not enough ships, there was not enough time. The Vrex had never planned for the complete evacuation of their planet. Admiral Susan Chen's ship, the Retribution, moved toward Vrex Prime's sun. The star was ancient and stable, burning peacefully at the center of the system. It had given life to the Vrex for millions of years. Soon it would give them death. "Deploy the disruptor," Susan ordered. The quantum resonance disruptor was launched toward the star. It was such a small thing, no bigger than a child's toy, but it carried the end of a civilization. When it reached the sun's surface, it burrowed deep into the nuclear fire at the star's heart. The changes began immediately. The sun's light started to flicker. Solar flares erupted from its surface. The star's magnetic field twisted and warped. Vrex scientists watching from their observatories realized what was happening and screamed in terror. "They are killing our sun," Dr. Vashitar, the Vrex's chief astronomer, reported to his government. "The humans have somehow destabilized the nuclear reactions at the star's core. The process is irreversible." On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the events at Vrex Prime in shock. Species that had existed for millions of years sat in their chairs and tried to understand what they were seeing. The humans were not just destroying a planet or even a solar system. They were committing an act of such scale that it challenged the basic order of the galaxy. "This must stop," declared Ambassador Theclon of the Zephyrian Trade Union. "The humans have gone beyond all reason. They are destroying one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy." Katie Sullivan, the human ambassador, stood up slowly. She had not spoken in the council chambers for months. When she did speak, her voice was quiet, but every being in the hall heard her. "The Vrex destroyed our children," she said. "Did you think there would be no consequences?" "But this is genocide," Theclon protested. "You are killing billions of innocent beings." "We are giving them time to evacuate," Katie replied. "More time than the Vrex gave our children. Our sons and daughters had no warning. They died in seconds, sucked out into space while they slept or played. The Vrex have 3 years to save their people." Elder Morden floated in his chair, watching the debate with ancient eyes. He had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, but he had never witnessed anything like this. The humans were not conquering the Vrex. They were erasing them. "Tell us about the Veltar," Theclon demanded of the old ethereal. "Tell us what really happened 3,000 years ago." Morden's form flickered as he accessed memories from the distant past. The Veltar were explorers, much like humans. They were curious and friendly, eager to learn about other species. The Harthani thought this made them weak. What did the Harthani do? They captured a Veltar colony ship. Aboard were 300 families traveling to a new world. The Harthani tortured the children in front of their parents, demanding that the Veltar submit to their rule. The Gao council chamber was silent except for the hum of translation devices. The Veltar agreed to every demand. Morden continued. They surrendered their weapons, their technology, their freedom. They became slaves to save their children, but the Harthani killed the children anyway. They said it was to teach the Veltar a lesson about power, and then the Veltar changed. Within a year, they had developed weapons that could destroy stars. Within 5 years, they had erased every trace of Harthani civilization from the galaxy. Every world, every station, every ship. The Harthani had ruled over 1,000 star systems. When the Veltar were finished, there was no evidence that the Harthani had ever existed. Theclon stared at the old ethereal. What happened to the Veltar after that? They left the galaxy. They said it was too small for beings like them. Some say they found other galaxies to explore. Others believe they transcended physical existence entirely. But before they left, they helped us create the first law. On Vrex Prime, the evacuation continued in chaos. Millions of Vrex crowded onto ships designed to carry thousands. Families were separated. Children cried for parents they would never see again. The lucky ones escaped to other worlds. The unlucky ones remained behind to watch their son slowly die. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched the Vrex fleeing their homeworld. He felt no satisfaction, no joy in their suffering. There was only a cold emptiness where his heart used to be. His son Danny was still dead. His wife Lisa spent her days staring at empty space, broken by grief. Victory would not bring back what they had lost, but it would ensure that no other parent would have to feel this pain. Dr. Benjamin Price monitored the quantum disruptor from his laboratory on Earth. The device was working perfectly. Vrex Prime's sun would continue to burn for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Then it would collapse into a black hole, taking the entire system with it. He had 11 more disruptors ready to deploy. The Vrex had other colony worlds, other suns that warmed their children. Price intended to kill them all. 1 year after the attack on the human colony fleet, Vrex Prime's sun began to flicker like a dying candle. The proud home world of the Vrex Dominion was now a cold, empty rock, drifting through space. 8 billion Vrex had been scattered across refugee camps on distant worlds. Their mighty empire was nothing but a memory. But humanity was not finished. The Galactic Council made one last desperate attempt to stop what they now called the Human Storm. A massive fleet of ships from 50 different species gathered at the edge of human space. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Generals and admirals from across the galaxy commanded vessels that represented thousands of years of technological advancement. Admiral Susan Chen met them with a single ship. The UES Retribution hung in space before the enormous alien fleet like a tiny black dot against a wall of steel. The human ship was dwarfed by the massive alien vessels, some of which were the size of small moons, but no one was laughing at the size difference anymore. "This is Admiral Thane of the Combined Galactic Fleet," came the transmission. "You will surrender immediately and submit to galactic justice for your crimes against the Vrex people." Susan Chen stood alone on her bridge. Her crew had been reduced to just 12 humans, but the ship ran itself now. Human technology had advanced so far in the past year that organic beings were barely necessary to operate their vessels. "You want to see a crime?" Susan said into her communicator. "Let me show you one." On the main screen, she displayed footage from the colony ship attack, the same footage that had been burned into the mind of every human alive. Children's bodies floating in space, parents screaming in the darkness. 8-year-old Danny Morrison, drifting past the camera with his eyes closed forever. "The Vrex did this deliberately," Susan continued. "They targeted the areas where our children lived. They killed 623 innocent boys and girls because they thought it would make us weak." Admiral Thane's voice came back, harder now. "That does not justify genocide. You have destroyed an entire civilization." "Have we?" Susan asked. "The Vrex are still alive, scattered, homeless, but alive. We gave them more mercy than they gave our children. The alien fleet began to spread out, trying to surround the lone human ship. But Susan was not concerned. She had come here to teach the galaxy a final lesson. "You want to know what real power looks like?" she said. The UES Retribution activated a weapon that Dr. Benjamin Price had completed just days before. It was called a stellar ignition device, and it could turn any star into a supernova instantly. Susan aimed it at an empty star system 50 light-years away, a system with no planets and no life. The weapon fired. 50 light-years away, a star that had burned peacefully for billions of years suddenly exploded with the fury of creation itself. The explosion was so bright that it lit up the night sky of a dozen worlds. The energy release was equivalent to all the weapons in the Galactic Fleet firing continuously for 1,000,000 years. The alien fleet stopped moving. Every admiral, every general, every being with eyes to see, understood what they were looking at. The humans could destroy stars at will. They could end solar systems with the push of a button. "This is what we could do to your homeworld," Susan said quietly. "This is what we could do to every star in the galaxy. But we will not, because we are not like you. We do not hurt innocents for political gain." Admiral Thane's reply came after a long silence. "What do you want?" "The Galactic Council is finished," Susan replied. "It has proven that it cannot protect the innocent or control its own members. You will form new governments. Governments that recognize human authority over galactic law. And if we refuse?" Susan looked at the massive alien fleet surrounding her ship. Thousands of vessels, millions of alien beings, all of them helpless before human technology. "Then we will become the monsters you think we are," she said. "And every star in the galaxy will burn." One by one, the alien ships began to power down their weapons. The great fleet that had come to stop humanity instead became the first to surrender to it. On Earth, President Amanda Clark stood in the memorial garden where the names of all 623 dead children were carved in black stone. Danny Morrison's name was there, along with Emma Price and hundreds of others. She read each name every morning, reminding herself why humanity had changed so much. Elder Morden arrived on Earth 3 days later. The ancient ethereal had requested a private meeting with the human leadership. He floated in his chair in the memorial garden, his energy form flickering in the morning light. "You have done it," he said quietly. "You have become what the Veltar became, the galaxy's new masters." President Clark sat on a bench beside Danny Morrison's memorial stone. "We never wanted this. We wanted to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. But they took that choice away from you," Morden replied. "They forced you to become something else." "The Vrex leadership is still alive," Clark said. "Admiral Krexthul and the others who ordered the attack. They live in exile on the Outer Rim. Sometimes I think about sending ships to find them. But you have not. No. Killing them would not bring back our children. It would just make us more like the monsters we fought against." Morden studied the memorial garden. Each stone represented a small life cut short, a future that would never exist. "What will you do now? You have the power to rule the galaxy. Will you use it?" "We will use it to protect," Clark replied. "Human fleets will patrol the shipping lanes. We will ensure that no species ever again uses children as weapons of war. The galaxy will be safe. And if another species rises to challenge you?" Clark's eyes grew cold. "Then they will learn the same lesson the Vrex learned. There are lines that cannot be crossed." Captain Jake Morrison now commanded the memorial fleet that guarded the site where the colony ships had been attacked. His ships floated in the same space where his son had died, watching over the debris field that had been turned into a monument. Every piece of wreckage from the attack was preserved exactly where it had been found. Jake stood in his quarters, looking out at the stars. On his desk was a photo of Danny, and beside it was his son's journal. The final entry, written the day before the attack, still broke his heart every time he read it. "Going to see the new worlds today. Dad says we'll build cities and make friends with aliens. I hope they like us." A soft knock came at his door. "Come in," he called. Lisa Morrison entered. His wife looked older now, her hair gray and her face marked by sorrow. She rarely spoke anymore, spending most of her time in the medical bay treating refugees and survivors. "The new ships arrived today," she said. 100 more vessels to add to the memorial fleet. Jake nodded. "Good. The galaxy needs to remember what happened. Here." Lisa moved to stand beside him at the window. "Do you think Danny would understand what we became?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. "I think he would understand why we did it, whether he would approve." Jake's voice broke slightly. "I hope he would forgive us." Across the galaxy, the new order was taking shape. Human ships appeared in systems where pirates had operated for centuries, driving them away with technology that seemed like magic. Trade routes that had been dangerous for millennia became safe under human protection. The Vrex refugees slowly adapted to their new lives. Some worked in the camps, helping other displaced beings. Others found jobs with species willing to hire them despite their past. A few even joined human crews, seeking redemption through service. But the galaxy had learned a lesson that would never be forgotten. In the archives of every major species, new warnings were added to their historical records. Never harm the young of a species capable of interstellar travel. Never threaten children as a weapon of war. The consequences were too terrible to imagine. Dr. Benjamin Price continued his research, but his focus had changed. Instead of weapons, he now worked on ways to heal the damage that war had caused. Medical technology that could save lives. Environmental systems that could restore dead worlds. Tools for creation instead of destruction. He kept his daughter's photo on his desk, but he had added something new beside it. A small sign that read, "For those who come after." The galaxy was different. Now, human ships patrolled the void between stars. Human law governed trade and travel. Human justice protected the innocent and punished those who would harm children. It was not the future that humanity had wanted when they first reached for the stars. They had dreamed of exploration and discovery, of friendship and wonder. Instead, they had become the galaxy's guardians, forever watching, forever ready to respond to threats against the innocent. The first law of the galaxy had been rewritten in blood and fire. It now read, "Never harm the young of any species, for their parents may be human, and humans protect their children above all else, even if it means burning the galaxy to ash." In his memorial garden on Earth, Danny Morrison's stone bore a simple inscription. He wanted to make friends with aliens. Below that, in smaller letters, "They should have let him.